So today I'm going to start on a pair of Subaru heads. These are from a 2019 WRX. They are direct injection heads. You can see the hole down here for the injector on each side here. Story on this is sounded like maybe 60 or 70,000 miles on this car, and it has lost a rod bearing. Customer brought these in, wanted me to just kind of check them over and make sure that it's okay. You can see here on this cylinder where the carbon is kind of somewhat knocked off there. The bearing is out just far enough that the piston was just starting to kiss the head. There's no indication it's hit any of the valves. I don't think there's any problem there. But as usual on these direct injection motors, there is quite a little carbon. That's the exhaust side there. That's nothing unusual. But over here on the intake side, if we look down in the ports here, quite a little carbon on the back side of those intake valves, kind of a buildup on there. And you know, customer asked me to just kind of check them over, clean them up, make sure they're okay. But in my opinion, if this engine is down, they've gone to the expense of pulling the engine out and putting in a new short block is what he told me they was doing. So they got a brand new short block from Subaru. We're going to make sure these heads are as good as we can possibly make them. So I'm going to go ahead and tear them down and do a complete valve job, make them new again.
Hey everyone, we wanted to invite you to become a member of the channel today. You guys see that we're always working on a lot of different projects here in the shop, and sometimes it might be several weeks or months before we post a video update on some of the projects that we're working on. But for our channel memberships, we're going to be posting a little bit more regular updates, plus some behind the scenes videos, extended cut videos, and maybe even just some extra videos that don't get posted to the regular channel. But anyway, it's a great way for you guys to support the channel a little bit more directly and kind of get some interaction with us behind the scenes. Just wanted to give you guys that reminder that we have launched that. Let's get back to the video.
These two exhaust valves I pulled out, you can definitely see where there's been some leakage past the face of the valve there, where that dark spot is. Same way on this one, definitely blowing by. So I'm glad that we have taken this apart in an attempt to do a valve job on this. I'm going to go ahead and remove these exhaust manifold studs. That makes it a lot easier to work on the head and clean the exhaust side. Generally, they come out pretty easy, although this one, they're a little bit tighter to begin with, but they do screw out nice. Let's see if we can get the seals and the spring spacers off these heads, and then we'll be ready to throw them into clean. Seals should pull off fairly easily here. We'll be replacing those with brand new when we go back together, which I think is only fitting considering they're going to do a short block on this engine. Now hopefully we can pull the spacers up off here. Yeah, there they come. A lot of times, in fact, almost always, aluminum heads have a hardened shim or spacer underneath the springs to keep the spring from eating into the aluminum head. Okay, that head should be ready to go into the jet wash. Let's see if the second head will go as well. That should do it. Roll it over to the other side here. I think I'll start here with removing these exhaust studs just like we did on the other head. Having those out of the way just makes it a little easier to work on the head. Sometimes these Subaru heads, the exhaust side is pretty rough. And I like to resurface those while the heads are off. I don't know if this one's going to be that way or not. It's a pretty low mileage head. Sometimes I push down just a little bit on that spring and tap the valve from the underside, and it breaks the keepers free so they come out real easy. Bring it down just a little bit, tap it, bring it down some more so we can get them completely out of there. So that's the first 4 are free. Same thing there. Kind of do my wiggle test here on the valves, see if there's anything to be real worried about, and I'm not seeing anything there yet. But we do have a considerable buildup of carbon on the backside of all the intake valves. So I think that will help this engine by cleaning that out while it's apart. I have a couple exhaust valves there that are a little bit dark on the backside, but they appear on this head to be sealing about as well as can be expected. We'll pull the seals off. Throw them away. Pull the spring spacers or shims, whatever you want to call them, off the head. I'm going to put those in my keeper here along with all the valve keepers. Screw that together, allows us to wash them but not lose any of the small parts. So I believe this head is ready to go into our jet wash. See if we can get it degreased, decarbonized just a little bit. Hopefully that all comes off without a lot of manual work. So at this point, we'll take the heads, go over here to the wash cabinet, open it up there, throw in a basket. Grab this head. Put it in something like that. Grab my basket of parts and set that in between. And the other head that I had set down here on the floor. Slide that in. Okay. Close it up. Set it on about 30 minutes. And just let it run. See you after a while. So when I last left off with these Subaru heads, we had just put them in the spray cabinet, gave them a wash there. I rinsed them off. Most of the oil and loose things were gone, cleaned off of them. Then I went over here to our oven, put them in the bake oven, where I baked them at 250 degrees for about 2 hours. That way it completely dries all the moisture out of them. At that point, I came back over here on the bench, used some duct tape, and I taped off every single one of these lifter bores and any of these passages that go into the oil galleys on this head. These have little screw-in plugs on that end, but this end here has just ball bearings pressed in the end that are pretty hard to get out of there. I don't like to have to mess with those. But if we tape off all of the openings that go into oil passage, then we can go over here, run the heads manually in our glass bead cabinet, and blast whatever's left of the carbon out of them that doesn't come off when we just run them through the jet wash. And then I wash, I pull the tape off, wash them again, and this is our end result. You can see all of the carbon is gone out of all of the ports. They are just about as clean can be. So we're ready to do the machine work on them now. You can see there all the ports are clean. So over here on the Surdy machine, I have my first head mounted up, and I did go through and get my cutter adjusted. There's my little form tool, cuts 3 angles all in one shot. There's a couple of them that I have done at this point, but I'll go ahead and show you on the rest of them here what it takes to make that happen. All right, this is my tool head that goes on the Surdy here. I've installed a pilot that is just ever so slightly smaller than the ID of these valve guides. It's actually almost snug when I put it down in that guide. The closer fit you can have, the better the seat will come out for you. I have taken my tool holder with the proper pilot and the form tool here and just adjusted the tool so that it matches the existing seat. I want to put this back as close to what it was originally as I possibly can. So with that, I'll install it in the machine, lock it in place, and let's see if we can cut one of those seats. So I'll come down in the guide there, unlock it so it can find center. I'm going to come down till just touch off and just enough to clean. There, I think that got rid of all the pitting. Let's go ahead and do the one next to it while we're at it, and we can be done with this side. Let the air float find center. Looks like they both cleaned. Let's put a little color on that so I can show you where it's seating on the valve. Black marker is all it is. We'll spin that with the little suction cup stick, just as if we were lapping the valve, but we do not have any lapping compound in there. It's not giving me as good an indication as I would like. I don't know why this is giving me trouble today. Well, actually, I do know why. It's because I'm trying to film it. Whenever you film something, it always goes wrong. There, that one shows me what I'm looking for. So there you can see where it has wiped the black marker off the face of the valve. I have a 1 millimeter wide seat pretty much right in the middle of the face of the valve. Drop the valves in. Go over here and take a look at the gauge. I don't think we could pull any better vacuum than what that is. Even when I turn it off, those valves are just about holding perfect, because we may very well be getting some leakage up past the valve and the stem, or between the guide and the valve stem, because we do not have any seal or any lubrication there. But that's just what I would call perfect seal. I'm very happy. I do have a second tool holder here, so I believe I can pull this tool out, change the pilot, and I'll go ahead and just roll this head over and cut the exhaust seats and finish it before I move on to the other head. I've set up a second tool holder here with a 1.5 millimeter wide seat angle. I need to use that pilot in the head with my bubble level here. And I can loosen this and roll that head over until I'm fairly close to being level. And one of the things that's nice about the machine, you don't have to be perfect, because the way the system works, floating the head, it will find the true center line of the valve guide, even if I'm not perfectly vertical with that guide. Run the column down, lock the column, loosen it, take this tool holder out, we'll set it aside because we'll need it again when we do the intakes. On the other head, off camera, because it's a little bit tedious, takes time, I adjusted this tool holder so my tool comes down there and pretty much exactly matches the original valve seat. I'll install that back in the spindle here. Lock it in place. I should be able to float over here, find my first valve guide. I'll adjust the machine here just a little bit. Release the air so it can center on that. Very carefully touch off. Well, that looks real nice, but now I need a valve to check that with, and I have not ground my exhaust valves yet. So we have our valve grinder here, and one of the first steps is to grind the tips of the valve here to square those up. And I have already done that, but what that amounts to is setting the machine here, putting the valve in the V block here, and coming over and just touching the stem against this grinding wheel here, just to true up the end of the stem. Once that is done, we need to come over here on the other side. I'll take the valve itself here, release the chuck, set it back in, grip it as close to the head as I can, but definitely where we are still on the wear portion of the valve stem. And before I start grinding, I have to set all my stops. So I'll bring the wheel in here so it's almost touching the face of the valve down here. And then I'll move over till I just bump the chuck and or the stem. This one, it's going to be the wheel against the chuck. So I'll move back just a little bit here and set the stop so I don't ever run into the chuck. And I'm also watching down in so I don't grind. You have to be real careful to never ever grind back below the head of the valve here. If you ever accidentally grind that, that makes a stress area where the head of the valve will probably break at a later date. Don't ever send a valve out the door where you've done that. And I am grinding these to exactly 45 degrees. You can hear it touched off on that. I don't think it'll take too much. I think we've pretty much got it at that point there. Let it spark out just a little bit. Back off. Let's take a look at what we've got here. Yeah, face looks real nice. This being a low mileage engine, it's really not taking a lot to clean any of this up. But since they are putting new short block in, I just really feel like this is a necessary step to make these heads as good as we can. So hopefully they'll last the life of that new short block. All right, with that first seat cut there, let's put some color on the face of the valve. And I'll put a little on the seat itself. Let's drop it in. Spin it around just a little bit there. See what that gives us. Well, that contact area, 1.5 millimeter, centered on the face, but it almost covers the entire face of that valve. Looks good on the seat here. I think we will just go with that. I don't see a problem there. That 30 just makes pretty short work of doing valve seats. Let's put a couple of valves in there and do a vacuum check if we can. There's some of these that have a EGR port that will keep us from being able to do that here on the machine. Let's see what happens. There we go. I can show you where we're pulling the vacuum on our test here. It's not quite as high as I would like to see. Sometimes you end up with a little bit of some cuttings under the valves. There, that's all it took, is I twisted those just a little bit. In fact, there may have been some of the color underneath that yet that kept it from completely sealing. Leaking off a little bit there when I release it, but a good portion of that is probably the leakage past the valve and the guide. These look about the same on the gauge over here. I'm guessing by the time we clean this up a little bit better and get our seals on those, I'll bet when we check it the next time, it'll probably show considerably higher on that gauge. Although I'm fine with the way that is right now. So that completes the seats on that head. Now all we need to do is repeat on the other head, and we'll have our machine work done as far as the seats go. That should be it. Let's put a couple of valves in there. Vacuum test that. Make sure. Put a couple in here. Yes, vacuum came right up on the gauge. And we're good with those also. So now let's roll this head back in the direction so the intake seats are vertical. So the valve guide is vertical is what I'm trying to say. There we are, very close. And again, as you recall, these don't have to be perfect because the machine itself compensates for the discrepancies. Just has to be close. Pilot back in the tool holder here for the intake side. Back in the machine. And let's see if we can surface those last four. We get a lot of questions about the oscillating sound this machine is making when we're cutting valve seats. That's because that is exactly what it's doing. It has a feature that I can turn on here that will vary the spindle speed up and down just a little bit, and it helps eliminate chatter on the valve seat. See, I can turn on there. It's running just a steady speed. One more click of the button, and now it's oscillating. All right, our seats should be finished. Let's put the valves in, vacuum test it, make sure they're sealing properly. Looks good. And this one looks good. If you don't believe me, let's just look at the gauge. There you have it. Let me relieve the pressure on it. And you can see it just darn near holds even once I shut it off. What leakage you have there is most likely coming between the stem and the guide. All right, surfacing these Subaru heads should be pretty simple. They're an easy setup on our machine here. I think I should be able to put a clamp basically on, let's see here. Probably go on this corner here and maybe up across the other side here where there's a little bracket, little casting that protrudes out the side. And I can check it here with level. Looks good that way. Good that way. I'm not anticipating these heads having any warpage, but we like to clean up the surface, eliminate any chance of the customer having head gasket problems. These Subarus do have some issues with head gaskets. So anything we can do to eliminate some of that makes a world of difference for the customer and the not only the mechanic working on this, but the customer in the end. Because quite honestly, I would just as soon never ever see these heads again. I hope they run several 100,000 miles till that car is completely worn out. Okay, there, I'm not quite touching. Okay, just barely touched off. I'm only going to give that about 1/1000th of an inch. And let's see what it looks like. And here we go. Okay, as I suspected, that first cut of probably what was about 2/1000ths of an inch completely cleaned up the gasket surface, left a real pretty finish for us. So let's see if we can do the same to the other head. And there we have the second head surfaced. You can see nice smooth surface. Any defects that may or may not have been there are gone. We know they should have no problem getting those heads to seal. So I'll pull that off the surfacer and we'll throw them once more over into spray wash them, and they'll be ready to assemble. All right, we have both heads loaded in the basket here of the spray wash cabinet. Now slide that in, close the door, and we'll turn this on and let her be for the 8 minutes. When that's done, I'll get them out and rinse them off, blow them off, and we'll get these assembled. All right, I think we're approaching the finish line on our Subaru heads. We have both heads cleaned, blown out, surfaced, seats done. I have my valves ground. I have all my parts laid out. I have my new valve stem seals, and I have my springs. So let's set up here. Okay, I'm going to start with putting a little lubrication on all of the valve stems as I install them in the guides. I always like to put the lubrication right in the keeper grooves. When I get ready to shove the valve in, I always feel like having a lubrication in that groove helps carry a little bit on down into the valve guide. This is just our standard Cleveite bearing guard assembly lube that we use. Sometimes we have it in a ketchup bottle. Kind of shakes people up a little bit because it does look like ketchup coming out of the bottle, and they actually are sometimes gullible enough to believe that's what we're doing. So it's kind of an ongoing joke around here. All right. So I'm gonna lay a shop towel here on the bench so I don't scratch the face of those when I flip them over. And we'll put the spring shims or locators or whatever you want to call them here back on. Most of the time on aluminum heads, they will use some sort of a shim or washer underneath the spring to keep spring from cutting into the head, since the aluminum heads are kind of soft. Having to kind of watch there. These are stuck together after having been cleaned. I'll make sure I don't accidentally put two on the same spring. And there we have all 16. Now then, the intake and exhaust seals are different. So let's go through here. The ones closest to me here are the exhaust ports, and I have these marked as being for the exhaust. They're new seals we get from SB International. And I think I'm going to use this old valve guide as an installer tool. Fits that seal pretty good. And I like using just a little bit of brake parts cleaner. Always seems like it makes those slide on easier. If you can get them to slide on nice like that, they'll lock into place and hopefully never ever come off. At least during the, whoops, that sprayed all over. At least during the life of the engine. Yeah, those seem to be all located properly. Okay, let's see if we can do the same with the intake seals. These seals all look pretty much the same other than the color of the rubber portion is different. I'm assuming they're made out of a little different material between the intake and exhaust. Or they may be designed to meter a different amount of oil between the intake and exhaust. I really don't know. I'm just going to take their word for it that there is a difference, and these are correct. Okay, there we have them all installed. Yeah, kind of look at each one again. Make sure things look right. Yeah, I'm pleased with that. All right, so I have my head mounted here on the guide machine again, where I can use the column to press the valve springs down. I have a tool here that goes in the chuck, and it has, you know, this flush end here that pushes against the valve spring, but it's cut out in this area so that I can get my fingers in there or any other kind of tool I might have to hold the valve keepers and get them in place. So I'm going to put that in the chuck. I'm going to start with 4 springs here. This is the intake side. And again, on these springs, like many we run across, the spring is wound so the coils are tighter together on one end than the other. I hope you can see that, but if not, take my word for it that down on this end, they're wound tighter than up here. The tighter wound coils always go towards the heat source, which is the head. That gives it more coils the heat has to go through before it gets up into the spring itself. Just helps them work better, cool better. So I can center up on that. Bring this down. lock it in place, grab a couple of my valve keepers here. And these are awful tiny little things. I hope I can just kind of drop them into place here. Might have to have a little pick here. Often works well to kind of push them into place. If I get the spring just the right height here, they should drop into where they belong. I can see already this pick I'm using has a little bit of magnetism to it, and it's actually caused me grief here. Sometimes when you're doing a job like this, something with a magnet helps. Other times I end up fighting it. This is absolutely not going the way it's supposed to. I think I mentioned the other day about how hard it is sometimes when you get out the camera. It just seems like a job that should be simple will just fight you to no end. There we have it. Kind of get centered up on that. I think about right there should be a good position for putting the keeper in. Back in the days, I'm sure anybody that has been doing this for years and years like I have will remember the Eagle Talons. Oh, they were a miserable head. There were 2 spring pockets on those that were just about impossible to get the springs on and off. And I would always start with the 2 hardest ones first, because my thought on that was if I could get those first 2 done without starting to cuss, even if I was just cussing to myself, the rest of the head would go pretty well. But you never ever wanted to save those 2 for the last, because by the time you got to that point, you'd already been fighting with the head enough that those last 2 would just about push you over the edge if you were already frustrated. There. See there? Get that first one done, kind of figure out your strategy, and the others will go easier. Get my spring centered up a little bit better there. There we go. Okay, that one's in. I'll turn the valve around just a little bit there so I can get out this one on the front. There it is. Now, if I loosen the clamp here and I tilt this head so that it'll be now the exhaust springs. If I can get them vertical, get the valve stems vertical, 4 more springs. We'll go down the line here one more time. Now these, it seems, yeah, is there a difference? I think the end of the stem may be just a little bit longer on these. Seems like there's a little less room to work in here. Okay, there's the first one. Drop the second one in. And let's release it. Uh-oh, there we go. Had my tool pinched in there for a second. There is a very sweet spot here of getting that spring compressed just the right amount of distance. And it'll allow those keepers to just kind of fall into place and not give you a lot of trouble. I have seen and heard of people that have tools that supposedly hold those keepers, and then you can just drop them back, drop them right into place. But I personally have not had or seen any tool that worked any better for me than what we're doing right here. It just takes a little bit of patience, time and patience. And I know a lot of times we don't have the time that we'd like to have to do this, but you just gotta kind of go with it and things will work. That one there's fighting me. Just can't. There we go. It dropped in. There we are. Okay, there's the first one. There it is. There, I like that way that went. So I think we can take this head out of here. Okay, is this going to come out? It will that way. Now we can put the opposite head in. Now this head is just a little bit shorter, so I'm going to have to slide this stand over. There we go. There, that should work. 4 more springs. Okay, that one went in nice. Okay, I believe that's it. Yes, indeed. Okay, second one. There we go. Go. I think these valve stems and keepers are just about the smallest we ever see. I won't say they are the smallest, but normally the things we work on, I don't see anything much smaller than what these are. And I'm glad. They are rather difficult to deal with. These are actually so small, a lot of times trying to work with them here, the darn little things will even like stick to your fingers. You think you've picked one up just like here and gonna move it over and lay it down there in front of me, and it sticks to your finger, and next thing you know, you move your hand and it falls off and you can't find it again. Okay, there we have all the intakes on. Add 4 more springs. Two more keepers. Come on, drop in there. There we go. There it is. Come on, fall. There it is. It was. Had it in, it came back out. There it is. There, we got that. Got that one. Okay, there, first one's in place. Second one is in place. Okay, second one. We have it. Okay, very last one. You watch, this will be the one that the keeper does a little flick and goes flying across the shop, never to be seen again. I hope not. That would be frustrating. Okay, first one's in place. Second one. And it's released. Well, that went a lot better than I thought it might. I was a little bit nervous when we started out there at how much that first one was fighting me. That looks a little bit better. After I washed my parts, they sat there in the basket, and the top of those retainers grew some of that orange color that we all hate to have. Most of the time it doesn't hurt anything other than cosmetic. So we'll take this off here now and set it up over on the other side of the bench and do our vacuum test. Okay, so I've moved my head back over here onto the sorting machine where we have the vacuum gauge to check our work. And that pulls a vacuum here. I'm going to put that over one of our exhaust ports, and you can see anything over that 0.7 there I consider pretty good at our altitude there. You can see we're well over that. Check the next exhaust. I mean, it just climbs right up there, lickety split. Move over here on the intake side. I've tipped the head down a little bit here so I can get to it. I mean, it just climbs right up there. Same way over here on that intake. And on top of that, not only does it pull the vacuum, I can shut the pump off. I can shut air off to the machine, so the machine is now not even operating at this point, but you can see it still holds vacuum. Just what I would call darn near perfect seal on those valves. I am really impressed with the way these came out, because anybody that has done a valve job knows that any head with stems as tiny as these are really can give you fits getting the valves to seal. One of the last things I have to do on these heads is to be sure I put the exhaust manifold studs back in. As you recall, I removed those. Makes it easier to work on the heads. Sometimes we surface the exhaust side of these heads, although this set I did not. But regardless, it made it easier to work on them. So I need to put those back in for the customer. It's always good to make sure they get all their little parts and pieces back. There's a lot of things customers will bring in that we don't need, and they're nothing more than just a pain in the butt for us to keep track of here in the shop. But regardless, we do need to keep track of them. This tool has 3 rollers in there that as you start turning, they grip the stud, and you can actually tighten studs, loosen studs, take them out, and it does not harm the threads. That really makes a difference. So what do you think? Did I do them right? Do you think they'll serve the customer for a good long while again? I hope so. So thanks for staying with us. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.